Welcome to another episode on Genealogy TV. I am here to tell you to look for informants and witnesses when you are doing your genealogy research. Now, why would you do this? Well, let's get into that here in just a moment. Before we start, my name is Connie Knox. I am a lifelong genealogist here to help you go further, faster, and factually with your family history research. Now, don't forget to subscribe and ring the bell so that you get notified each time I upload a video. There is a website, a newsletter, and a Facebook page. Make sure you're hooked up with all those. Links are in the show notes. So that you don't miss a thing, I want to make sure that you know that there is a handout for this episode. So the handout information also will be in the links in the show notes. There's 3 different ways you can go ahead and get the handouts. But I encourage you to join the channel membership. All right, now, where to find informants and witnesses, and why on earth would you do this? Well, often overlooked in records are informants and witnesses in our documents. And the reason why you want to look for those people in our genealogical records is because they are often family members, or at minimum part of our fan club. Now, if you're not familiar with the fan club, this is Friends, Associates, and Neighbors. Thank you, Elizabeth Show Mills, for that acronym that we use every day in our genealogy research. Now, included in this group could be people like bondsmen that are often found in marriage records, bastardy bonds, whatever kind of bond. A bondsman often is a family member. You might find them in wills, like as administrators or probate records, church congregations, event attendees, like weddings, wedding anniversary parties, funerals, religious events. Look for the guest registry books for the people that are attending these events or witnesses to the events, okay? Now, where to find informants and witnesses? Here's a list of places that you might find them. Census records, birth certificates, marriage licenses, marriage bonds or marriage bans, death certificates, delayed birth certificates, that's a good one, we'll talk about that in a minute, newspaper articles, court records, adoption records, wills and probate records, land and property records, obituaries, religious records, cemetery records, business records. There's so many places you can find informants and witnesses. Now let's talk about vital records for a minute. Keep in mind that vital records are almost always going to have a witness listed on them. In this example, this delayed birth certificate had several witnesses, including the informant's name and relationship to the applicant, okay? So birth certificates in the United States really didn't start until about 1909, 1910, depending on the state. And in some states, didn't come into compliance until really in the late 19-teens, like, 1918. Delayed birth certificates were often created in the 1930s for those people who were trying to get a Social Security card that, started around the mid-1930s. Those people who were born before birth certificates were started had to prove their age. And so they had to do this through testimonials. And so when people were trying to prove their age, they had to obtain that delayed birth certificate in order to get a Social Security card. So let's talk about census informants for a moment. In the 1930 census, while the informants are not really noted in the census record, the enumerators' instructions were told, this is just kind of a side note because I wanted you to be aware of this. Enumerators were told to put the age of the person, even if the informant was guessing, at the age. Therefore, don't always assume the information on these census records are accurate. And the informant maybe, just was guessing at an age, and so the enumerator had to put down whatever the guess was, okay? Now, in the 1940 census, the informant was actually noted with an X with a circle around it. If you haven't seen that before or you were wondering what that was, this helps the reader, you, evaluate the strength of the information. For example, if you think about it, if a grandmother or a neighbor or somebody else was giving that information, they may not have the best knowledge of who was in the family. So take note of who the informant was and think about how knowledgeable the information was about the ages and other information about the family members in the household. Now this was, let's say, a mother-in-law or a grandmother who might not know all the ages of the people in the household, but maybe is living in the household. But she's like, you know, I think my granddaughter is 17. I don't know. So they wrote down 17, right? Okay. So here is some information from the Enumerators instructions, specifically paragraph 446, where it said identification of persons furnishing information. This was the title of that area. Okay, so it said write an X with a circle around it, and do this in column 7, right after the name of the person who furnished you the information concerning the members in the household. If you find it necessary to obtain information from a person who is not a member of the household, write the name of this person in the left-hand column margin opposite the entries of the household. Thus, information from John Brown. Let's talk about cemetery records for a moment. If you find them, cemetery records often have signatures of other family members when they were making the arrangements for the funerals. A lot of times this is very close family, so if you can find current cemetery records, seek those out. Wills and probate records are often a great place to find witnesses and informants. Keep in mind that not all family members may inherit from the deceased from their estate, but may be named as witnesses or administrators in the deceased probate packet. Now, estate packets may contain more than a will, if there was one, but also the deceased household information and items sold as part of the estate. The accounting of the items sold often names other family members as well as the neighbors. All right, now let's talk about marriage records for a moment. Frequently, other family members are named as witnesses on marriage licenses and marriage bonds. On those marriage licenses, look for surnames that are common to your family. Okay, so to wrap this up, there's a lot to learn from witnesses and informants in our family history records. This helps us when we are finding these witnesses and informants. If we can identify who they are, it helps us evaluate the accuracy of the information given. Well, I hope that was helpful. It is time for you to go find some more videos on Genealogy TV. You can find them right over there. We'll see you in the next one.